That's going to be our topic today. So, Ed, if you're there, buddy, welcome to the Water Zone. How are you? Ed, you there, buddy? Oh, maybe I got to unmute him. Let's see here. Are you there with us, Ed?
I don't hear him.
Yeah, Ed, buddy, I think what's happened is the studio has permanently muted you. Can you, if you would, I know you can hear us, hang up and dial back in with the pin, and we'll get you back on the air, buddy. Can you do that?
Well, we can't hear him say yes, but I'm sure he got you. He got you.
Yeah, he heard it.
All right. Sorry about that, folks. Sometimes there's a little technical issues from people calling in, and we'll resolve that by all he has to do is dial back into the system, and we can talk. But it's going to be an interesting subject. We're talking about a lot of smart plant and tree choices and plumbing zones and fire smart irrigation technology. So it's going to be a good, robust discussion. And especially with all the fires that have happened in California and the ones now that are happening in New Jersey, and all over the place, it's a hard topic to neglect, because anybody could be, caught in that. And even if they did everything right, you got neighbors who maybe don't do everything right. So you never know.
Yeah, so quick flip for you too, Rob, as we were waiting for Ed to come back, to dial back in and get back on. But I was talking to Chris before you came on there.
Hello. And participant is now joining.
Hello. You there?
There he is. We're in good shape. I'll get back to you on that issue, Rob. So
Ed,
sorry about that, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing great now.
Well, good. I hope you heard the introduction there, and we finally got you on the line. The studio's got the mic on there, so I for some reason I couldn't get your audio back, but here we are. We're good. So hey, listen, I know we want to get right back into talking about defensible fire zones, and that's going to be a good part of the subject matter. But before we do that, we'd like to let our listeners know a little bit about our guest. And so, kind of tell us a couple of things. First of all, how'd you, way back in the before times, as they call them, right? How did you get into the business? And what's sort of been your career journey up until today, Ed?
Well, I started out mowing lawns at my home back in Central Ohio. So a small town, Urban Crest, Ohio, outside of Columbus. And our family had had a large property. And we didn't have riding lawnmowers, we had push mowers. And so my job, basically as a sibling, was to cut the grass and mow the lawn. So I got in a lot of lawn mowing in my early days. And my folks also didn't believe in allowances. They allowed me to use a lawnmower to go out and cut grass for their neighbors and friends. And so that's what I did coming up, is I cut a lot of lawns and a lot of sweat through the summer. But I didn't realize that some 30 to 40 years later, to actually be a career path for me. So I got a lot of apprentice work in years ago back in Columbus. And my uncles, they drove trucks. They had their own businesses where they did blacktop and hauling and brickwork and demolition. And so I worked with them a lot through the summer, learning different tasks as a laborer for my uncles and their friends that had their own businesses back there. So I learned a lot of the trade that I'm doing now back in Ohio. Thus, the name Midwest Landscaping is just the work ethic of the Midwesterner. That's the reason why I kept the name, because a lot of times I'm based here in Los Angeles, and people say, why come you got a name Midwest Landscaping? I said, well, number one, nobody else has that name, and number two, I'm giving my props back to where I learned a lot of my work ethic and stuff like that. So that's why the name Midwest Landscaping. I've been in business now for like about 33 years, sole proprietor, and I moved down from Seattle. I went there in Seattle when I graduated high school, and I actually was a commercial printer for 7 years up in the Seattle area, and then I moved down here in California in '89. And started my business part-time, my wife and I, out of the trunk of a car, a Renault Alliance. We had two of them back of the trunk, and we'd go around and we'd cut lawns for multifamily apartments here in Long Beach. And that's how I got started and got my contractor's license, and joined the California Landscape Contractors Association to learn more, and here I am.
Well, that was back when, gas was 89 cents a gallon kind of stuff, wasn't it, Ed?
Yeah, it was 26 when I was back in Ohio, and then when
Holy
I
cow.
moved down here, when I moved down here, it's about right, about $89 or something like that a gallon. It's funny because I was just over in Arizona this past weekend, and their gas was like $3, and I was like shocked. I was so happy to fill up over there because it was kind of like, man, it's only like $40 or whatever for a fill up on my truck. But that's the fees and stuff we pay here in California. But that's another issue, another topic. But that's pretty much the ball game from the standpoint of how I got started and learning, going to school out at UC Riverside Extension School they had at night. I would drive out from Long Beach and take courses in turf management, and also going to Golden West College in Orange County to pick up pest control, and Long Beach City College to learn about plant ID. So I figured that I would learn a lot of different things so I would have superior knowledge, since I didn't plan on hiring a bunch of people and having a big crew and stuff like that. So I figured that my leg up was superior knowledge over the guys that had a lot of trucks and fancy equipment and stuff like that, and it's proved itself quite well over the past 30 years plus.
I'd say so. Well, Ed, what's Midwest Landscape doing today? I mean, what's a typical day in the life for Ed Wallace? I mean, I know you've got a part of your business is called Unique Environment, and unique is spelled a different way. So, tell our listeners a little bit about what you're doing today.
A lot of the business that I'm doing today is renovations and retrofits, where people are converting over their properties, commercial and residential. A lot more residential than commercial, but commercial is picking up because of the different guidelines and requirements that is being put forth towards the commercial side of the business. So I do a lot of renovations with clients. I have a couple of designers that I'm on their preferred contractor list, and so I'm blessed with that aspect of not having to go out and do a lot of marketing and advertising. Plus, since I've been in business quite a long time, I have a lot of a good referral base from past clients. And so going in, taking out the old, putting in the new. The plant material is one of my specialties. I like driving around, picking up the different types of plants, and that's really becoming pretty challenging because a lot of nurseries are either selling or consolidating. Two of our biggest nurseries that supply native plants, they're going to be closing their doors after this year. So it's making the picking a lot harder. And it's really interesting because a lot of the water districts and entities, they're still telling us to put these plants in, but our palette is becoming quite smaller from the standpoint of actual nurseries supplying the plant material. And the water situation, specializing in drip and water smart irrigation controllers and components, and the highest technology we can have for homeowners, so it makes their life simpler and narrow to save water. That's the whole name of the game nowadays here in California.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's get into the main theme here. Rob, I'm going to let you take the next question, buddy.
I appreciate it. Welcome, Ed, to the Water Zone. We appreciate you coming on the show. And
thanks for having me on.
Want to get in and pick your brain about this interesting topic that our listeners should know about. And so when I knew you talk about a defensive fire zone, can you define that for our audience?
Well, defensive fire zone is a design buffer area between a structure like a home or a business and wildland areas that would help slow down the spread or stop the spread of a fire. CAL FIRE defines it pretty much as a defensible space or a buffer zone between the structure and the surrounding areas. And at having a defensible area or space as a barrier to slow down or halt the progress of a fire that would otherwise engulf or burn up the property, it helps to ensure the safety of the firefighters, thus defensible, because if the firefighter can't get in there close enough to fight the fire, it's not too much they can do. So being able to help out as much as possible by creating a defensible zone, you can better help the situation of suppressing or eliminating the fire all around.
Okay.
And defensible space is pretty much your first line of defense for the home against the wildfire.
What makes up your smart plan and tree choices? How does or do you do hardscape in those areas? How do you segment that?
Well, there's zones. Like say for instance, like CAL FIRE designs they define like about 3 different types of zones. You have like a zone 1 through like zone 3. and zone 1 would be like the closest to your home. That's like 0 to like 5 feet away from the home. So a lot of times you have a lot of plant material up against the house. Most homes have a lot of plant material up against the house, or they have a bunch of mulch or whatever up against the house. And in that particular zone, it's best to have something that's not going to encourage the fire to like go up the side of the house, so to speak. And so we're kind of like recommending or suggesting you use hard scape type of materials, either like gravel or decomposed granite within the first 5 feet. You can have some plant material in there, but it's got to be pretty much low ground cover type. You don't want things to scoot up the house there. And you have another zone that's like zone number 2, and that's within 5 to like 30 feet. And there you would have like medium size or plant material that's not as cluttered, and there's not a lot of grasses and stuff like that. And it has space between the plants so that it doesn't just ignite and take off, adding fuel to the fire, so to speak. And then you have the zone 30 feet out to like 100, to where you can do some different types of plantings there that are more, the whole key though is maintenance. But those are kind of like the 3 zones that we're talking about. So it's like 0 to 5, 5 to 30, then 30 to 100 feet away from the house.
Could you define what, I'll let Chris get back into this, the plant types and tree choices you need for that? Because, I mean, doesn't everything burn, or you have some items that don't burn?
Well, like, say, for instance, like you want to use plants that are low resin, high moisture, slow growing type vegetation. And it's interesting because I went up to the area that was the fires up near the Eaton Canyon, and in that area there, and it was terrible because it was a lot of devastation, but it was so unusual because there were some houses that were untouched, and they had all kind of trees. I mean, trees that you would think that would just flame up, and they weren't touched. And the house beside it was totally burned down. And one thing I did notice, though, around these homes, there were a lot of aloes, big aloes, not the real thorny ones, just big aloe plants that a lot of the people had along the houses in the front. And they were like almost untouched, and it's really unimaginable. I've seen one property where the actual outlet covers, the aluminum outlet covers, they were melted, but these plants were like really robust because they have all the moisture and stuff in it, in the content of the leaf structure. So when we're talking about different types of plant material, you want plants that are low resin, high moisture type of plant material. Not that you got to have a bunch of succulents and stuff all engulfing your house, but hey, from what I've seen up there, from that devastation up there in the Eatonville area, it wouldn't be a bad idea, especially if you live in pretty much fire-prone areas. But California lilac, we utilize a lot of California natives in our plant materials because it's more conducive for the areas that we live in Southern California. There's different zones, like from the coast to the chaparral out to the high desert and such. And so depending on what zone you live in, and that also depends also wherever you are in the United States, you can go to your county extension and actually go to your fire department and ask them what type of plant material is most conducive to kind of mitigate the fire danger. Because a lot of the fire departments, they have to have some type of template to work from to encourage people that, hey, you're going to do something, we encourage you to have this type of plant material growing around. Manzanita, here in Southern California, manzanita is a very good variety. It's kind of medium grower, monkey flowered. A lot of grasses. People like grasses and stuff like that, but grasses seem to flame up quite a bit. So you got to be kind of careful with those. Those kind of like torches in a way. So there's certain grasses that are usable, and some grasses you want to kind of shy away from because you don't want to encourage the fire to take off. Trees, oak trees, western redbuds, olive trees, believe it or not, olive trees, but mostly a lot of live coast oaks, a lot of oak trees. And even though they may have some damage because you say, oh, they're pretty dry looking and whatnot, oak trees are very moisture retentive and also very, they don't burn as fast as what you think they may burn because they have a good amount of moisture content. The trees and stuff you probably want to stay away from is some of the palms, the pines, definitely the pines and stuff like that because they get a lot of litter in the tree. And they flame up. And a lot of the fires that are caused because of flying embers. They go up in the air and they just kind of land on the roofs and under the eaves, and there you go, you're flaming up.
It's I got to ask you a question, Ed, because it's really interesting to me. In my head, I'm thinking about fire zones and I'm thinking about native plants. You mentioned manzanita as one, but in my mind, I've always thought that other native plants that can grow, large, right, like toyons and ceanothus and buckwheats and sages of every different description, right, aren't because they're native and all over the hillsides here. When they dry up, they go up pretty quick. So, do I have the wrong impression in my head, Ed? I guess.
No, you do not, and they will go up. I mean, any plant that is not properly maintained from the standpoint of basic maintenance, such as clearing underbrush, dead branches, dead limbs, too much growth on plant material. And that's I'm glad you mentioned it, because that's one of the biggest items that caused a lot of destruction was lack of maintenance. To whereas, and sometimes over maintenance. You get people that, like in areas like in Palos Verdes area, they have to mitigate the grasses on these slopes. And so the gardeners or landscapers, they come in and they cut everything on the slope. And what happens is, it's nice and you don't have any fire danger, but you have situations where a lot of that grass and plant material that they clear out, it was actually holding the slope. So you have erosion problems. When it does rain down here in Southern California, you have erosion problems. And so the maintenance is one of the key issues when you talk about creating defensible space and maintaining a safe environment so that you can mitigate the possibilities of fires.
Yeah. Well, let's shift a little bit and talk about what folks can do for irrigation, right? Because I know a lot of people want to keep these plants healthy and all that kind of stuff. So, from an irrigation technology standpoint, those of us who are in the industry, including the both of us and Rob, right? We're always seeing irrigation technology evolve. And is there such thing as fire smart irrigation technology, Ed?
Well, fire smart depends on how you plan out what you're planting, because your plant material is going to require a certain amount of water. Ground covers and stuff like that, you have technology that you can put underneath the ground, subsurface drip, so to speak. You have drip tubing that has emitters that are built inside of the tubing so that if there was a fire, that irrigation tubing is under the ground, so it's not as much of an issue as if you have a lot of pipe above ground and melting and stuff like that. So that's a little bit of an advantage of having subsurface drip. But also you get more efficiency from the use of the water that you are applying for the plant material. It's a lot healthier for the plants and to help you reduce the amount of water. Now, the technology from the standpoint of the controllers, and you can get a smart battery controller as well as a smart electronic irrigation controller. And a lot of these controllers, they are weather-based, and so they're going to schedule watering times based on the type of plant material, soil moisture content. You can go really the maximum extremes. A lot of commercial properties have all the bells and whistles, but a typical homeowner can get a smart controller and not worry too much about overwatering or underwatering the plant material to where it's like the plant is so dry that, it's going to flame up because it doesn't have enough water in its system to withstand the heat from a fire. There's a water cannon that Toro manufactures. It's called a P2. I was just talking with my sales rep about it, asking how things were going from the standpoint of the sales. And it's actually, they use these cannons like on baseball fields to wet down the field for a game. It actually comes up out of the ground and it's on a turret. And he said the main purpose of it, utilizing it like in a fire prevention or a fire retarding situation, is to put as much water on the ground as possible. It's not like to be like the LA fire department trying to put out the fire with one of these water cannons. But it's for, you're not going to see somebody out there manning one of these, spraying down their house or the fire with one of these. So don't get no ideas out there about that. The main purpose is like, if the fire is approaching, is to get as much water down as quick as possible to wet down the area so it doesn't like traverse over the ground. But also, Scott, who's my sales rep, he's told me that, or my regional rep, he told me that Yeah, I mean, using it to put water on a home or in a plant material, he said, yeah, that's good. He says because if any embers that go up in the sky to come down, it's going to land on a wet roof or wet plant material. But I have a client out in Moore Park, and we had devised to put in a couple of cannons up on the top of his slope. We have an olive branch, and that water cannon, man, is going to save a lot of property. And being able to put down like about a couple hundred gallons of water in minutes rather than these impact sprinklers, because that water dissipates in the sky. I mean, it's getting airborne and volatilized in the air, and you're not able to get enough water down, especially if the wind is blowing and stuff like that. And it's not like when the fire is burning, you're going to turn these things on. It's kind of like if the fire is approaching, you know what's happening. It's kind of like a preventative measure. At least you can do something. And I was talking with Scott, and he says that the Getty Museum, they're looking at probably incorporating 40 of them at their Getty Center out there in Malibu.
Yeah, I mean, I'm familiar with those turf cannons, as you say, the P2s. And by the way, just on an off note, Scott Donahoe is a great guy, so I'm glad you have a good relationship with him. But one of the issues with those big cannons is they require so much water, right? 150 gallons up to 300 gallons per minute kind of stuff. And locally, generally, not that sort of volume is provided by the residential, or the city provided water. It's just it's just too much. It's just too much at one time. So people are building tanks or their pump systems they can pull water out of their pool with. Have you heard about that, Ed?
Exactly. I have a buddy of mine that he does a lot of rainwater harvesting systems, and we talked about developing a system where we can have water so when it does rain, I keep saying that, when it does rain here in Southern California, you can be able to store that water, but being able to have like your own reservoir as a defensive measure, that's something that can be done. My buddy, he builds them underneath like driveways and patio structures, and so a lot of these units that he's building, most of them over in Manhattan Beach area, along the beach area, they're like 500, 600, almost 1,000 gallon tanks that he's building. And they have little recycling water fountains and stuff with it. But utilize it for a pool. There's companies out there that they do that. And I know that in Northern California, Marin County, there is a couple companies that they specialize in that type of stuff. And so I would encourage people to go to Marin Fire online and check out some of the information they have. I mean, they've been through so many wildfires up in Marin County in Northern California. They're kind of like the template on how to fight fires and what to do after a fire. So I really encourage people to go online, because the different counties, they have different types of requirements about zones, like so many feet in LA County, so many feet in San Diego County. So I would encourage people to go online to find out on CAL FIRE that they can find out what their defensible zone is, but also find out if there's contractors in those areas that specialize in converting over pools or transitioning where you can have a situation with the water cannon, because they take like 2.5-inch pipe in order to fire up one of those.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of water as well. So,
right.
Ed, just looking at folks here on the chat board as we're talking, getting a bit of interest here. Tell us about what you can provide to these folks. I mean, you must be a resource for this. So if folks need help, what can they do?
Well, they can get a hold of me a couple ways. And my website is www.unique, and when you spell out unique, is UNIEEK environments.com. You can go to my website. My phone number, 562-755-9914. I do have a YouTube presence. We have a channel. It's called Your Landscaping Coach. I get a lot of referrals from that. If you go to Midwest Landscaping at alcambrio.com, or just type in Midwest Landscaping, you'll see me. My cowboy hat, you'll say, hey, that must be the guy. Yeah, but the moniker is called Your Landscaping Coach. And that's kind of like probably one of the fastest and best ways nowadays. Is I probably put out a couple YouTube videos a week, and so that's been working pretty well. but also our contractors associations, California Landscape Contractors Association. We have our state website, clca.org, and there we have contractors from Northern California all the way down to the border and down to San Diego. And it's depending on where you live, you can check into each chapter and check out the contractors and put in what you're looking for. And contractors that choose to be on that website, their links will come up, and then you can get in contact with the contractors from a local standpoint. But I do consultation. Get a hold of me. And we can discuss what your situations and challenges are and see if we can resolve. If I can't resolve it, like I've been around the industry for a long time, so I know pretty much not everybody, but a lot of the big guys and the smaller guys and the people that do really great work, I can get you in contact with them.
Awesome. Do you and the CLCA ever partner with water districts and fire organizations to conduct live education for seminars for these things? Because I think that's very important too.
Yeah, well, the dual certification was something that was brought about by the California Landscape Association in our water management program. And so we partnered with Metropolitan Water District of Southern California on a lot of different things, especially training from the standpoint of being certified. And a lot of just homeowners or do-it-yourselfers, they attend these programs, like the certification for the California landscaper, that was put on by the Thomas Paine and also some other entities, and that was over in Montclair, and there was a lot of homeowners and contractors were there. So there's a lot of different programs available if you just go online, especially to Metropolitan Water District, because they're partnering with a lot of different water entities and water agencies. Yeah, and the CLCA, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I say we got to turn it over to NBC because it's their news hour. But thanks for that.
Okay.
People can listen. People can go on our different media platforms and replay this, and we'll get you all the things. And if they want to know, just email us. Ed, thanks very much for coming on. We want to have you back in a couple of weeks and talk about some other things. So we do appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for the opportunity. Have a good day.
Okay, and the most important.
Thanks, buddy.
The most important thing, Chris and I always want you to all know, is please help keep our planet blue. If you like green, you got to have blue. Thanks a lot for listening in, and join us next week. We'll have some great guests. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
NBC News on KCAA Loma Linda.